but let's jump into the challenges that we have seen and we have helped to overcome. And the one that we're going to be talking about today is the information gatherers, right? So now, the idea of someone's not ready to apply for a permit, right? They're not, you have a great permit system, cost you a lot of money and you put a lot of time and effort into it, but they don't want that. They want answers. They want information. And these are many times people without any construction background, and they're just looking for information like setbacks or fees or requirements or restrictions. And they many times don't know what they're looking for. They're just looking for help, right? For a potential project. The challenge that we're seeing out there is, the challenge we're seeing is cities and counties are very good at sharing a lot of information. And so you see pages, zoning maps and permit documents and what doesn't require a permit and, building codes and all these things. But if you truly empathize with this resident that doesn't have a construction background, it doesn't make sense and they're confused. I've talked with a bunch of cities and counties that say, well, we have our own guide today. And when we finally drill down on it, what we find is a static PDF document that shares a lot of information, but what usually continues to come up on the document is this may apply, or if this applies, if this applies. And again, to the resident, well, does it or doesn't it? They don't know. And so they end up calling you, right? Because it's confusing. And really, at the end of the day, they're overloaded with information. They may have a page of, I've seen 50, 60 PDF documents on a page, and maybe there's 2 on that page that apply to them in their instance. So they're coming to you and they're confused. But the other challenge that we're seeing is challenges for the permit staff, right? A lack of consistency in enforcement, meaning, especially when we're talking larger cities and counties, but also even with smaller ones. I'm working right now with a city in Florida where the building official, it's a smaller city, and he's so excited to get started with our guide because he's the only individual that can answer these people's questions correctly. And so, and now he's seeing that a system can assist him where maybe even a non-technical person in the city can manage. But so what we're finding with this lack of consistency is people are gaming the process, especially with larger counties. They'll call in 4, 5, 6 times, and they may get 4, 5, 6 different answers, and they take the best one, right? And there is no single source of the truth, right? And now with a guide, an online guide, we can help with that. Customers can't retain everything they hear. Really, what we're replacing today for large cities and counties is a manual process, right? And usually it's someone in the permit department pulling PDFs from various areas, maybe scribbling or having the resident add, you need these steps too, and these fees and these type of things. But at the end of the day, they can't retain everything. And so it becomes a challenge for them, right? Every process is different. You're in a flood zone, so this process is different from you. You're in a historical zone, so you can't put chain link fences around your house or whatever the issue is. And it's also hard to keep up with the regulations. Again, larger cities and counties, there's a new regulation. Is everyone abiding by it now? Is everyone running with this new regulation as these things constantly change? Training staff is difficult. These newer people may be making more mistakes than a veteran person that knows this, backwards and forwards. And there's a lot of other work to be done. I was talking with a larger county the other day where they said 50% of their time was spent answering residents' questions before they applied for a permit. That's on the high end, but there is a lot of other things to do. So if a system can help reduce those calls by 20 to 30%, and where the resident's still happy because they're getting their information, what a powerful tool. So you guys can focus maybe on actual permitted work that's happening out there. You know, at the end of the day, today, the people keep coming and calling. This is an actual picture of a county in Georgia and the line of people they had for their permit department, you know, coming in with some of these people more than likely just having questions before they apply for a permit. So some of the keys to excellent service, you know, as it kind of talking to people around the country, we have a lot of these concierge level permit processes, you know, applied here and type of things. So how do you give them this key to excellent service? For a lot of counties, it's just putting a lot of bodies on the desks and we'll answer any questions, right? But what about, you know, a system that can identify challenges early, right? So an idea like, hey, your property's in a flood zone, right? And the resident might not even know that, or you're in a historical district. They may not know that. Or your property isn't zoned for that. I'm asking questions about putting a multifamily house on my property, but my property is only zoned for single family houses. Good to know that early, right? And so it might change the discussion. It might direct them in a certain area to have that discussion with the planning department, as an example. Or even better yet, you're not in the city or the county, you know, in our city or county. Certainly with some of the larger counties that we're working with, the unincorporated areas that they're responsible for makes their territory look like Swiss cheese. And so it's important to early on let these people know you're not in the county. You want to talk directly to a city or town that you're involved with. Also providing clear direction, you know, and tailoring it to their specific, you know, planning or zoning or circumstance that they have. Not just giving them a boilerplate that does or does not apply. And being consistent, as we've talked about, having that single source of the truth. We actually, with Camino and our guide, we're seeing customers come in and try to game Camino, and they generate multiple guides, and that's okay, right? They're not taking up your time, but also Camino's going to continue to give consistent answers. You know, they may say, well, what if my shed was only 100 square feet instead of 200? Would that save me money? And the system will answer them, but we're not giving them different answers for the same question. And also, which is becoming more and more prevalent these days with technology, you know, people, you know, with Amazon.com, you can order whatever you want at midnight right from your phone. People are getting more and more comfortable and really almost expecting that. So being able to have a service that they can turn on after work or before they go to work and get some quick answers and not have to stand in line or be on hold is a huge value to them. So, and these are some of the things that we at Camino can help to make easy, right? Taking into all this information that you guys have, the handouts that you have, but now just sharing the appropriate handouts versus hitting them with all of them, using your GIS layers to identify zoning conditions, but also bringing in that staff knowledge. We're finding a lot of these processes are just up in someone's head, and being able to bring it down into the system and so everyone can benefit from it. So how do we do it, right? How can Camino generate custom guides instead of that static PDF document? And how we do it is by bringing in your GIS layers, bringing in those, flood zone layers, historical zones, bringing in the city or county limits, bringing in the zoning of all the property that the system can analyze and determine whether specific projects apply. But also, depending on the different type of project, sometimes even depending on the zoning conditions, Camino can be set up to ask very simple questions, right? And for the permit department, it's more than likely the questions that they're asking today. How big is the shed going to be? How big is this addition going to be? How many rooms are you going to have in this, whatever. But simple questions that the applicant can answer. And we put all that together and share that guide of just the information that they need. So, and a lot of people ask, they say, well, what's the integration to your guide and our existing permit system? And I do emphasize on a guide only. It's just sharing information, right? It's really replacing the manual process that you guys have today of pulling PDFs down and scribbling on a sheet of paper. That's the part, right? We can, though, in Camino, at the bottom of the guide, if and when they are ready to apply for a permit, we can give them a link to your permit system, and then they jump right along and do their thing. We do have an option for some cities and counties that either don't have a front-end application portal, and maybe their permit system is older and doesn't have that capability, or in the example of Alameda, California, they were receiving so many applications that were down the wrong pipe in their permit system. So they had to back it out, and it actually took time. It wasn't an easy process. Or they were receiving incomplete applications, and they were chasing these people down for the rest. And in Alameda's example, it was creating a 4-week backlog of their permit process. Well, we do have an application portal that feeds from the intelligence from the guide and lays out just the forms, fees, and documents required for a complete application, and also doesn't allow for mandatory items to not be completed. We won't allow the permit to be submitted without it. So you could take that, and again, in getting that submittal, then we can integrate it with your existing permit system, and it can go through the rest of the process that way. The last point I'll make is Camino does have a complete permit system. We will not be talking about that today because we have been able to separate out, the functionality. We'll be talking about the guide today. Because people on this call, many of them are larger counties and cities that have a permit system that they're happy with, but they don't have anything before the permit process begins to answer questions. Camino does allow it's very flexible and configurable, so it can allow guides to be generated for other items. DeKalb County, Georgia just signed on with us for a building guide, but also a business license guide, because that's challenging as well. Pompano Beach has us for special events. Macon-Bibb County, Georgia has us for planning and zoning, and it can be used in many different departments. In fact, we find we may start off in the building department, and then someone says, well, could you help me in my business license department? And the answer is yes. We do have over 100 customers using us today. The only reason I say that is because as a hosted solution, we're constantly getting great ideas from our customers. We don't use them all, but those that we do use, you get to benefit from. So those enhancements that we're rolling out monthly, if not quarterly, we make you aware of and then roll out, and you get to benefit that at no additional cost. So really beneficial to be sharing this system with others as well. I think we'll have time at the end to touch on, but Camino also, one of the other benefits of Camino is there is no coding in our system. Literally, an individual in the permit department with no IT background, with a little bit of training on the logic of Camino, can build an entire system, or certainly modify and maintain a system, right? When building codes change, when fee structures change, instead of needing to call us or some IT professional to code this in, make these modifications, you can do it yourself faster than you can call us. We're certainly there to support, but it's not needed. And we may be able at the end to touch on how you can very easily manage your own system without, and that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue these days. So that's that on that side. We are going to be jumping into the demo now. I will say, if there are any questions that come up during the demo, chat them up on here, and I'll certainly look to answer them as we go, or certainly at the end we'll have a question and answer period then. We did talk about how Camino is a hosted solution. Your permit, your IT department loves us because really the only thing they need to build is a button that takes you to Camino, right? In the example of Charles County, Maryland, they have EnerGov as their permit system. They have step one is creating a guide, which would take you to us. Step two is applying for a permit. So that's one way to do it. We can also link them to EnerGov within the guide. Santa Clarita is another guide user. They have a Acela, and they just have this big button to take you to their guide. When a resident does click on the button for the guide, it takes them to a landing page. We'll come here. This is where they'd land initially. And this is a demo site. A lot of our customers have just residential and commercial building projects as options. This shows how you can do everything from opening a business, special events, reporting a code violation, but we're going to focus up here. So in this example, we'll say it's a residential building project, and you can see up top, we have this Google-like search bar. So if, let's say, a resident's in a rush and they say, listen, I'm just trying to see what I need to put in a pool, right? They type in pool, and Camino shows, hey, you're looking to install a pool house or a pool and a hot tub, and they can go from there. But in this example, we're going to say it's a new accessory structure. And again, we have drill down options of what type of accessory structure this is. Another point to point out is the configurability of Camino. If you're looking at this page and saying, well, that's not how we would do it, we'd organize it differently, you can, right? This is just one example to give you some ideas. But in this example, we're going to go into a ADU. In California, accessory dwelling units are so complicated. Literally, we have cities buying Camino just to make sense of the ADU process for the residents. But in this example, clicking here, Camino is asking, what's your address, right? Because again, we are using their your GIS layers, and so we want to know where this project is taking place. We would have a drop-down area of addresses in and around your area. In this example, we're using Palo Alto. And in searching, Camino gives a little pointer down to your specific house, and you can confirm this location. And we're already starting to customize the guide, right? The system is looking at the location against GIS layers and identifying, are they in a flood zone? Are they in a historical zone? But now we're going to those simple questions, right? We don't want them to have to call you to help them answer a question. We want these to be simple. Does the construction impact existing sidewalks? Is it going to have sprinklers? Are there any trees on or near the site that might be impacted? As simple as this question is, this is a huge problem for large cities and counties that have tree ordinances. Santa Clarita was one of them. They have oak tree ordinances. And what was happening is newer people were forgetting to ask the question, and they were forgetting to let the person know that they needed a tree permit as well as their building permit. And when the inspector went out, he shut down the process. Everyone was very frustrated. No one told me about that. And so now with the guide, it doesn't forget, right? So it always asks that. In this example, this question is: the ADU is going to be larger than 200 square feet, and is it going to have any kitchen or gas appliances? Now we also have this, and we could put this I'm not sure how to answer it button after each question if you felt it was necessary. But what this is for is that question that I'm a little confused. I'm at your average resident. They can click on it and you can give them more information of what you're talking about, right? Maybe it's 8 o'clock at night and we don't want them having to stop and call you guys tomorrow. They can, understand what's necessary and answer the question and move on. So in this example, Camino is also going to generate the fees just for information, again, information purposes only, right? And in this example, the fees are based on the project valuation. So we'll say $20,000. Just know that if your city or county has a more complex fee structure, Camino can ask the necessary questions and do the necessary calculations on the back end to give them their accurate fees, right? And so now we can submit our answers and we have our guide. Hopefully you guys saw, I've been rambling on as we've been going through this, but generating a guide for your average resident is really quick. One of the things, Santa Clarita brought up to us is before Camino, generating a proper guide manually took them about a half an hour. Now with Camino, even if the resident came in and said, can you just help me with this because I'm not good with computers, it only now takes them 10 minutes to be able to generate a guide. So very quick turnaround, doesn't have to really even be that long for most people. But here you can see in our guide, we're letting them know what those fees are, as well as giving them information on, what to expect in their application, etc. This is kind of a high level, and we can click right here and get started. So again, the goal with Camino now is we're only sharing information that's pertinent to them. In this example, we're letting them know, hey, your project is in a flood zone, right? And maybe because of that, there's additional steps they need to take or a link to special construction they need to facilitate because they're in a flood zone. We're also, in this example, letting them know your project is properly zoned for an ADU, right? So they don't have a problem there. In this example, we're sharing a frequently asked question page that might be attached to a page full of a bunch of documents. But now we're only going to share this ADU FAQ with people that are interested in an ADU. When it comes to setbacks, instead of them calling you to generate the setbacks, because we know the zoning that they're in, Camino can generate the setbacks for them. But also, on every step, you can see we have this comment section here. So as an example, I'm looking at setbacks and I say, I have a question, and I rattle off my question here, post my comment. Camino now knows what department to send this question to. In this example, it's planning and zoning, right? So whether it's an individual or a group in planning and zoning will get an email with this question, and they can reply to this question right from their email. If they want, they can go into the system and look it up or whatever, but they can also start a conversation back and forth with the applicant. And then finally give them an answer, let's say. But one of the powerful things here is that conversation is being stored in Camino with their guide, right? So let's say a few weeks or a month later, they do apply for a permit and they put their pool right on the property line, and the inspector says, what the heck are you doing? And they say, I talked to planning and zoning. They told me I could put it on the property line when I asked them. Well, you could look back at the notes and see the conversation and say, no, they didn't. They told you something completely different. So helping to remove a little bit of that he said, she said situation. And in this example, again, because it's information only, we're going to let them know what's required. In this example, hey, you're going to need a building permit and you're going to need a tree removal permit, right? So now we're not forgetting about that tree removal permit they need to apply for, and also sharing with them requirements, right? And again, it's specific to them. So this can be an attachment of the format you want their plans to be in, or specific plans requirements for an ADU, aesthetic requirements. In Santa Clarita, they even go tips for hiring a designer. So you have that. And even, in this example, structural engineering requirements. We're also sharing with them the fees. So, $1,100 for a residential accessory structure fee, $1,000, but they're not paying it here, right? It's just, again, informational. Another point here, which is pretty powerful for a lot of cities and counties, is outside agencies can also participate in your guide, right? In the example of Santa Clarita, LA County is their fire department, right? So if an individual is in a fire zone, there's different construction requirements for being in a fire zone that's managed by LA County. So just know your outside agencies that aren't part of your city or county can also participate in the guide and keep their part, current and up to date, or even be part of questions if it was necessary. So now, and in this example, you can see we have that example of, hey, if you're ready to apply, click here and, click here and apply for your permit. We could even have before that, here's some training on our permit system. If you have videos or stuff that you want to share, that could be part of the guide as well. Another powerful piece that we bring in that example, again, of, let's say, an older individual that's not comfortable with computers comes into the office or calls in and says, can you help me? Your permit staff can very quickly go through the guide with them, asking the questions now and having the resident answer. And when they generate a guide, they can come right up here, download this as a PDF document, and they could email it to an individual if they're on the phone, or print it off for the person if they're standing in front of them. And all of that information that we shared with the same hyperlinks and setback information and everything is here for them in an organized fashion, and you're not concerned that something was missed in that way. So that's the front end of the system for the applicant themselves. For the applicant, if I went back to my submissions, you can see now I use this as a demo site, so there's a bunch of different things I have in here. But if a applicant has, a few permits or something that they've or we're gathering information on, they could come back and open their information up, right, and be able to see that. On the back end of the system now, though, you have the same information that's being shared with that applicant. So let's say, as an example, I call in and I say, I live at 1925 Bryant Street. Well, you could certainly come up here and type on 1925, and Camino will filter down and find your address. And you can come in, open up the guide that they generated for themselves, and go over the information. I have a question on, whatever, setback information, and you can come in and, look at the information, go over it with them. Here's that question that they asked. You can even come in here and answer the question if you didn't answer it in your email. And so being able to post that back to them, but also this is going to be stored with your application. So coming back here again, you can see the information, the address, what they're applying for, but we also have this powerful activity feed. So you can see, and here's where, I just answered the question. Here's the question that they asked. Here's when they logged in to generate this guide. So all that helpful information there for you as well. Not only are we sharing this information that we shared with them, we're also sharing an active map of the project and the GIS information of the property as well. I have Santa Clarita's up here. They have their GIS layers in. And so again, a question comes up about the property. You can come through, look at the existing GIS information that was stored along with the property, and this may help you in answering their questions without having to jump somewhere else in that example. With the submissions, you can also very easily slice and dice this information. You can pick the columns that are important to you that you want to see. And you can also filter down and look at, just maybe what happened over the last month, or, a specific breakdown, and set up and create reports. If you wanted to see how many people generated guides, and you could filter that down and export that information out into a CSV file, maybe for a city council meeting or whatever. You have the ability up here to save these views if you wanted to, city council report that's generated monthly. Camino also has the ability to automatically generate a specific report monthly for you, so you don't have to. So you have the submissions, but also you have an active map of all the guides being generated. So powerful for you. I like to look at Santa Clarita's here. We can look over the last month with Santa Clarita. We can look at specific types and even filter down. And if I wanted to see just new custom homes being considered and guides being generated for, I can see that. I can even look at just ones where a guide was provided to the individual, click on a specific project, see the basic information, but if I wanted to now, click and go into that application itself. Again, this is a Santa Clarita guide, and you can see here, not only do we have questions that were asked of the applicant, which might be a good thing to avoid any he said, she said situation, but you can also see the questions where the system is asking itself, right? So it's asking, is this in this specific layer, in this zoning layer? Yes or no, right? And being able to customize these processes. Camino also generates a report for you, and this report is on the activity of your guide. So we'll look over the last month with Santa Clarita. They had 349 people come to their guide. They had 248 start a guide, and they had 108 had guides presented to them. Now, for some of these, they in Santa Clarita, they have the ability to log in as a guest. And so they actually don't generate guides. They generate the information. And so they might go in quickly and get setback information and get out. They don't save it, but also your account manager can sit down with you looking at these areas where they stopped and find out could there be ways to improve the guide so that more people do generate a guide. You also can see when people are coming in, and in Santa Clarita, they're coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and after 6 o'clock at night when the city's closed, because they don't need for your help. They can get this information themselves. In McKinney, Texas, 30% of their guides are generated after hours. Again, because it's easy, and the benefit for you is those are people that aren't calling you, asking you for these same questions. You can see top submission types, if that's helpful for you, as well as another active map. The last thing I wanted to share with you guys is just that ease of use of the system itself. And the way Camino is set up, it's really two things. Submission types, which are the different types of projects that you have in the city. Now, these submission types could also be applying for business licensing or special events, right? But in this example, it's an organization of your residential projects, right? On the right-hand side, we have steps, and the steps are the informational steps, right? That you can share with the applicant. If this was an application portal to be able to also apply for a permit, these steps could be fill out a form, pay a fee, add a document, right? And so as easy as that to transition a guide into an application portal if necessary. But at the end of the day, the way we customize it, and we'll look at this ADU process in Santa Clarita, is with rules. Rule number one is these guides will always appear with this submission type, right? So there's going to be things you're always going to have to do when you apply for an ADU. And these are the steps that you're going to do, right? And so very easy to edit the connections and, add new connections or disconnect or connections. But step two is how we can customize each of these. So this one is based on a question, right? And the question is, does the sprinkler does your existing structure have sprinklers? And if you answer yes, then you do things like, the LA County, plan review needs to happen, right? And the way that we can edit this, if we come in to edit this condition, and the only reason I'm showing you is to show you you're not seeing any coding, right? Here's the question. Does the existing structure have fire sprinklers? It's a yes or no question. It could also be a number question. How tall is your fence? How many square feet is your shed? And if it's over a certain amount, you have to add a few steps. If it's under a certain amount, maybe you don't even have to have a permit, for a fence under 3 feet tall. So, but then in this example, we include the steps if the answer is equal to yes. As simple as that. So ways of customizing and adding steps to a process automatically within the system. Now, this process could also be the system asking itself, is this person in a flood zone? If the answer is yes, add these 3 steps. If the answer is no, don't add the steps, right? And so very easy for the system to customize each guide accordingly. And the ultimate goal is to make it simple. So that is about the end of my my webinar here. I did want to open it up to questions if there were any out there. I know I've had a few that have come up while I've been demoing here. One question, can Camino manage the entire permit process? And yes, we can. You know, for a lot of our customers, though, their permit system is entrenched, is very complex, took years to install, and so we understand, and that's where our guide can be of assistance. Someone also asked, is there any integration required for the guide? And for a guide only, it is information only. And so it does not require integration, right? We can set up at the end a link to your permit system. So if they want to go right from our guide and jump over to your permit system, we can do that. It's not really integration. Some people kind of think of it as that, but not really the case. Another question came up here. Could this guide be utilized for planning and zoning? And the answer is yes. In fact, a lot of planning and zoning departments generate guides shortly after the building department starts generating guides with us, because Macon Bibb County Planning and Zoning Department created an entire planning and zoning permit system with us because they needed a system up and running in 3 months, and we were able to give them that entire system set up in 3 months, which also brings up a point that is important to lay out for you guys. Implementation of a guide is quick. For some of you, you have had implementations of permit systems that lasted years. With Camino, our implementation will last between 3 to 5 months. It can be either Camino-led, where we manage the whole process with your guidance, or your department can do it if you want to save additional money. It's that easy to be able to implement. Lastly, had a question just pop up. It says, how is your guide different from the guide we have today? And we kind of touched on it a little earlier. What we're finding, guides, people call them guides, and they are quasi helpful, but the challenge with guides that you may have today is they're static information, right? They're not customized to the process. So inevitably, the resident comes back to you and says, well, what is going to apply to me? And because it's still confusing. With Camino's guide, we lay out exactly what is required, and go in that way. But that's it, guys. I appreciate your time today. Certainly any other questions, you can email me with them. Hopefully you have my contact information, and open to answering any other questions you have.